This week on Jerusalem Dateline, what's missing from the reporting in Gaza? The media's lopsided coverage of Israel's war with Hamas. Plus, hiding behind houses of worship, how Hamas is using mosques and churches to launch their attacks against Israel. And a strange new alliance. Israel joins forces with Egypt and Saudi Arabia to fight Iran. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell, coming to you about a mile from the Gaza border. During the month-long war, the media broadcast thousands of images of Israeli attacks against Hamas inside Gaza. But you rarely saw a Hamas fighter or rockets being fired towards the Jewish state. Some reporters say Hamas retaliation and intimidation is the reason that part of the story has not been told. For more than a month, Israel's efforts to stop Gaza rocket fire and destroy Hamas tunnels has made headlines and led newscasts around the world. Two images dominate the war between Israel and Hamas. On one side is Israel's military actions, like airstrikes, artillery, and ground troops. On the other side, video of Palestinians suffering, wounded, or killed in those military actions. But what's missing?
In Gaza, we have not seen Hamas fighters. They are not roaming the streets of Gaza City. They're not carrying weapons. Where are they? We've never seen those pictures in 4 weeks of reporting from this region.
The Western press has not had access to the fighting arm of Hamas. So the impression creating is you have an Israeli army fighting and you have Palestinians on the other side. And that's already playing into Hamas's media strategy.
Hamas media watchdogs also crush what they consider negative reports. Hamas expelled this reporter from the Gaza Strip for his reports on Twitter. CBN News' George Thomas spoke with him inside Gaza.
He came to us, in essence, telling us that he was hauled in by Hamas militants and interrogated and threatened, and said that they didn't like the tweets he was tweeting, in essence, telling the world that Hamas was using civilian areas, in this particular case using this journalist's hotel right next to his hotel, to fire off rockets from the Gaza Strip into Israel, and they gave him 24 hours to get out of the Strip.
Italian journalist Gabriele Barbati posted this on Twitter only after leaving Hamas-controlled Gaza. Out of Gaza, far from Hamas retaliation, misfired rocket killed children yesterday in Shati. Witness, militants rushed and cleared debris. His tweet corroborated the IDF account that Hamas rockets, not the IDF, hit the Al-Shifa hospital on July 28th. Filmmaker Michael Greenspan posted this exchange with a Spanish journalist on Facebook. I asked him, how come we never see on television channels reporting from Gaza any Hamas people? No gunmen, no rocket launcher, no policemen. We only see civilians on these reports, mostly women and children. He answered me frankly, it's very simple. We did see Hamas people there launching rockets. They were close to our hotel. But if ever we dare pointing our camera on them, they would simply shoot at us and kill us.
There was evidence that Hamas was using hospitals, schools, civilian neighborhoods, mosques to launch their rockets. There was evidence of that, but they did not want the Western world to know that.
Oren says keeping the Western world in the dark works with predictable and devastating consequences.
They're using the civilian population as human shields, and so Israel, no matter how cautious it is, it invariably ends up causing civilian casualties. That creates very painful pictures on television screens that immediately incites the streets, particularly in Europe and South America. That immediately translates into diplomatic pressure in the Security Council and human rights groups.
They realize that they have a captive audience among Western journalists to report one side, to show these horrific pictures of men, women, and children injured, killed. Look, we don't excuse this. It's horrible. This is war. These are the realities of war. But you have to be able to question Hamas straightforward. You have to ask them, are you using United Nations facilities? Are you using schools? Are you using mosques and places of worship?
In their attacks against Israel, Hamas not only used mosques, but also a church compound to launch their attacks against Israeli citizens. George Thomas shows us in this exclusive story from Gaza.
Archbishop Alexios is Gaza's most prominent Christian leader. His decision to open his church to 2,000 Muslims escaping the war surprised many Gazans.
Christ tells us we must love each other, our neighbors and our enemies. No other religion says that except the Christian faith.
Alexios and the estimated 1,500 Christians who live in the Gaza Strip walk a fine line between trying to stay alive and the Bible's command to share God's love. Since Hamas's takeover of Gaza in 2007, human rights groups have accused Hamas of imposing strict Taliban-style Islamic laws.
Islam is the rule of this place, and whatever Hamas says, we must obey or face consequences.
Alexios is now concerned about what comes next after the guns fall silent and the rockets stop flying.
There's a lot of anger on the street. We need forgiveness and love to flow.
He took CBN News to the roof terrace outside his office. He showed us how militants reportedly used the church compound to launch rockets into Israel. He refused to discuss details on camera for security reasons, but days after the war started, Israeli missiles targeted an area close to the church's sanctuary. This is what's left of one of two minarets that used to stand tall here along the Gaza Strip, not too far from the Mediterranean. It was a major mosque. It was apparently hit by 7 Israeli missiles. The Israeli government makes the argument that places like mosques, hospitals, and densely populated areas are routinely used by Hamas to fire off their rockets. Just around the corner from the church, Mohammed sits in complete shock.
I picked up the phone and the Israeli army said, I have 5 minutes to get out of my house. They were going to destroy it.
This is what's left of Mohammed's 3-story apartment complex. He, his 5 brothers, and their families lived in the building. Word on the street is the brothers are reportedly tied to Hamas and used the apartment to store weapons, a claim Mohammed has denied.
The Israelis attack schools, they attack hospitals, they attack mosques. You ask them. They know why. I don't know why.
This week, Israel's military released a map of Gaza showing dozens of positions from which Hamas fired rockets. Dramatic footage from drones flying above the Strip also show Hamas firing from populated areas. Back at the church, Bishop Alexios says he's not out to pick a fight with Hamas or Israel. He simply wants to serve people.
We're disciples of Jesus. We must give love to everyone without condition.
George Thomas, CBN News, the Gaza Strip.
Israelis living here on the Gaza border face terror threats from land, air, and sea. Recently, we visited one of those communities to find out what it's like living on the front lines of terror. When Palestinian terrorists emerged onto an Israeli beach last month, Ilana Moore and other residents of Kibbutz Zakim looked on in fear.
I was terrified. It's like you see an action movie, but then you understand that this is your house.
As seen in this IDF video, Israeli forces killed the terrorists before they could attack.
When we came home and we see it in the television, it was really, really terrifying. It's like they come out from the beach a few meters from home. They come for one reason, to kill.
The infiltration took place here on these sand dunes, but that's not the only danger. Rockets threaten 75% of the population, including Ilana and the people at Kibbutz Zakim behind me. Hamas launched more than 3,300 rockets at Israeli communities in less than a month. Israelis here have just 15 seconds to run to the shelter after the Seva Adom or Red Alert sounds. And it's been warning of rockets for more than a decade.
It's very stressful, exhausting. You want your peace, you want your quiet, you want to keep your life. But there is someone else that choosing for us.
Israelis have survived these strikes thanks in part to precautions like home security rooms and making this entire preschool a fortified bomb shelter. Moore knows that danger well. 2 times rockets hit her house and another attack wounded her son Jordan 8 years ago.
They were playing outside and there was Seva Adom and they didn't have enough time to run to the house. So they lie on the ground and put the hands and then it's
Scraped his back?
It's back.
Wow.
For years he didn't want to come out of the house.
Now, even more chilling is the discovery of dozens of tunnels leading into Israel with the intent of carrying out terror attacks.
They come out from everywhere. All these holes in the ground and you see them coming out. It's 2 kilometers more and they are in my house.
Moore says the Palestinian people are caught in the middle between Hamas and Israel, but the media isn't portraying the whole story.
I cannot blame the Palestinians, but I can blame all the others that see just one side. All over the world, people talking about us, that we are murdering them and killing them and everything. Where is the side that people sitting and shooting from the places?
Despite these dangers and challenges, Ilana, along with thousands of other Israelis, chooses to stay put.
I don't leave Israel because I like Israel and it's my place. So wherever I go, it can happen. So this is my house. This is my family. So we are for each other and we are together here and it's no way we go.
Up next, talk about strange bedfellows. Israel appears to form an alliance with Saudi Arabia and other Muslim nations to counter Iran. Hamas has dominated Gaza since 2007, and it's a constant threat to Israel's security. But in the larger Middle East, it may be small compared to the other dangers facing the Jewish state. Israel's prime minister suggested that Israel is finding allies for a bigger battle, this one against Iran. Israel made a surprise move by pulling forces from parts of the Gaza Strip, while still vowing to respond against any Hamas attacks. But the most profound legacy of this military operation may be an emerging regional alliance to combat Iran. Netanyahu announced a new level of regional cooperation that he said would surprise many. He added it would be a very important asset to the state of Israel. It's a move that may indicate a major shift in the Middle East.
Perhaps for the first time in its history, Israel finds itself a kind of de facto member of one regional camp, arrayed against another.
Middle East expert Jonathan Spire says this unprecedented alliance unites Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel to face their common enemy, Iran.
So there's a sense in which this emergent alliance is an alliance of countries associated or allied with the US, but which are nevertheless deeply disappointed or dismayed at the direction that US policy has taken on a number of Middle Eastern files, and perhaps most importantly on the issue of Iranian nuclear ambitions.
CBN News analyst John Waggy says Netanyahu and other regional players feel the US and the West won't stop Iran's nuclear program, so they must be ready.
The bigger picture is Netanyahu cannot afford only to concentrate on this terrible problem with Hamas in Gaza. Hamas is small potatoes compared with Iran. He does have to deal with the threat because it's immediately threatening to the citizens of southern Israel especially, but he can't focus just on that. And he may need to make some regional cooperation with some allies like Egypt and potentially even Saudi Arabia in order to deal with the larger threats like the nuclear one from Iran.
Spire says this new regional alliance sees the U.S. aligning with the wrong people. One example came when Secretary of State John Kerry tried to broker a ceasefire with Qatar and Turkey, two states that financially support Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood.
It's bringing in the very forces that are supporting Hamas, the very forces that come from a similar ideology to Hamas, the very forces that are staunchly opposed to Israel and staunchly opposed to the Western interest and staunchly in favor of the Muslim Brotherhood.
With or without the U.S., it seems this potential alliance feels they may face Iran alone. Hamas may have attacked Israel, but it also may have helped bring a region together to face the Middle East's biggest threat, a nuclear Iran. Coming up, an interview with Earl Cox and why he's supporting the soldiers of Israel. Not too far from here, we joined IDF soldiers for a barbecue, sponsored by American Christians, led by Earl Cox, and they wanted to show their appreciation for those who fought for freedom. So Earl, it's great to be with you right now. Tell me what this means to you to have all these soldiers fed and sort of given moral support.
It's an emotional thing, very difficult to explain. Knowing what these fellows have gone through in the last 4 weeks, many of them have not even been able to take a bath, as you very well know, Chris. And to be able to bring them a hot meal in here and maybe supply some other things that they needed, like wet wipes and so forth, it's probably been one of the highlights of my life. And I've been in 5 wars, and I have never been this emotional about anything. Because these are the guys that you're looking at now that are on the front line, Chris. These are not the fellows that are standing back in the back. They are the ones that are blowing those tunnels up. And so I feel a kinship with them. like a brother or a dad, more or less a dad or a grandfather with them because they're all so young. But I see how they are bringing the Israeli people together. I mean, I was over at the Barcelona hospital where most of the wounded were taken immediately. And when I saw with my very eyes how moms and dads and friends and neighbors and everybody else had come to bring them candy and to just to stay with them and pray with them. And gosh, I just think this has been a way that Israel has become, and Hamas thinks they hurt Israel. Hamas brought Israel together. And the people are standing with their young men and women.
Earl, what's the message that you're trying to bring to the soldiers here?
I want them to understand clearly that we are solidly behind them. We will not stand in back of them, but we will stand beside them. And there's a big difference between being in the back and on the side. There are many people that deserve the credit rather than me. My face is up front like yours, Chris. We get the credit for things that other people really are doing behind the scenes, and they're not getting that credit. But there is a time that they will.
And what's the response you've been getting from the soldiers?
Embracing me, loving me, can't believe that these things are happening, that here people come from America and you're willing to give us hot food. You're willing
because you're not only supplying us hot food, you said you brought T-shirts and socks and a few other things during the war.
Those, candy, underwear, and just about everything of the essential that they would need. And as I looked around here, it made me feel, oh, it's so great. You've got those T-shirts on, you've got those socks on, knowing that we could make just a little bit of difference in their lives and bring a little bit of comfort to them from a people that loves them.
In what way do you feel that they are fighting the same battle that we're fighting in the U.S. and the West?
Well, you can look at the whole world, what's happening in Afghanistan, Iran. You can look what's happening in, the whole world, Syria, the whole world. It's all up in arms, and many of them are against the United States. Israel does not have a friend, as you very well know, except the United States. I don't know of any nation on the face of this earth that would go as far as giving them aid, helping them. Most of them are boycotting Israel. And here we're standing with them. And I think that's important. And every request that they've made, we've given them, our United States Congress. And I say, God bless each member in Congress that's voted for them because they're standing solidly with them with what they need.
And you've been doing this a long time. I remember seeing you up at the up on the border in Lebanon on the 2006 Second Lebanon War. So you've been here every time Israel's been at war.
Yeah, I was like you. I was walking the streets many years ago with a gas mask on my face during the Intifadas. Yeah, this is my third war plus the engagement with Israel.
Right.
And it's been a good part of my life that I've spent here, 16 years now. And I hope I can get a few more in it in peacetime rather than in war.
Anything else you'd like to add, Earl?
As a Christian, I think that my message is to these people that I bring the love of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to them. And instead of beating them in the head with the Bible, after all that we've done with these people, with the pilgrims and the crusaders, and etc., that they see a new Christian, a Christian that really believes in the Word of God and believes in the Bible, that it's inherent all the way through, and in the Torah. I believe in that Bible, and there's nothing in that Bible that tells me I shouldn't support Israel, but there's one thing that says I should. I will bless you if you bless Israel. And you know, at my age, let's face it, I've been blessed by God for standing with the state of Israel. And I try to tell people the same thing. It's not necessarily money he's talking about. It could be many, many things. And I'm just grateful to him that he lets me have this wonderful opportunity to be able to come and be amongst his people.
Yeah. Amen. Thanks, Earl.
Hey, Chris.
Coming up, visiting Israel in the middle of a war. It's just one reason this group of American Christians is among Israel's strongest allies. Christians United for Israel, or CUFI, brought pastors and Christian leaders from every state in the nation for a solidarity visit to Israel at this time. Here's a look at why they came to be on the front lines of the war between Hamas and Israel. Christians United for Israel, known as CUFI, brought a group of 50 pastors and Christian leaders from every state in the nation and the District of Columbia to Israel.
To come and simply tell to the people of Israel, we support you, we understand you. There are still people in America who can distinguish morally between Israel and Hamas, and there's still people in America who appreciate what Israel's doing, not just to protect their own citizens, but we believe deeply when Israel battles Hamas, they're also protecting us in America.
They visited Sderot, the town where more rockets have fallen than any other in Israel. They found Israelis profoundly grateful for the visit. Bible teacher Billy Brim said The appreciation began on the flight over from a flight attendant.
She said, "Oh, thank you for what you're doing for our country." And that's what they say everywhere. Thank you for this. Thank you for standing with us. Thank you for coming. It's just amazing.
The visit provided a frontlines look at Israel's war against Hamas, including Israel's now famous anti-missile system, the Iron Dome. They also got a front row look into Gaza. For many, it was eye-opening.
To be here, to stand, to look over, it really embeds it deep within your soul as to the dangers Israel faces every day of her life.
Pastor Jay Bailey plans to bring a message back home.
I'm going to let them know that I looked over at the place where those rockets originate from, stood on the observation point in which tunnels are being developed and dug underneath, and this community here stood out the dangers these precious people face every day of their lives.
They also expressed concern for the people of Gaza.
One thing that's really concerned all of us that's on this trip is the loss of life of innocent children and innocent civilians who are caught in this battle. We're praying for a cessation of violence. We're praying for the peace of Jerusalem. We're praying for the safety of the Palestinian people, the regular citizens. But we are praying that this nation will be wise enough to defend herself.
Yet they believe Israel's war against Hamas is just, an enemy of both Jews and Christians.
After the Jews come the Christians. After the Saturday people come the Sunday people. It's the same extremist theology that drives Al-Qaeda. These are people determined to kill Jews and Christians, Americans and Israelis.
Well, that's it for this edition. Check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.